We're about to kick off this program. It's going to be fun. First thing I want to do is introduce you to Michael Landau. Michael is the chapter's VP of Professional Development, is responsible for pulling together this august panel of speakers. He's going to take us through the event. I am the keeper of the clock, so for the speakers, entertain me, you might get a little bit extra time. For me, I'm going to cut you off, just so you know what to expect.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
No pressure. No pressure.
I love juggling. I love juggling, so there's no fire involved with it. Mary would get thrown out if we did that.
Just a little fire.
Have fun with your presentations. I know some of you expressed some trepidation about doing this in 10 minutes. But wow us with your expertise. You have 10 minutes to show us what geniuses you are. We can't wait to see. So anyway, I'm going to hand it off to Michael. Have fun, guys.
Well, the important thing about rapid fire is not to get fired, but to be rapid. I was just telling a little tidbit in the corner that John F. Kennedy was one of the fastest speakers that we know, and he spoke about, I think it was like 340 words a minute when he received his oath of office or when he was sworn in. So I've set the bar for everybody. So thank you again to Mary and Drinker Biddle for this wonderful room and our great dining hall outside. Remember, if you don't like anything that's going on, there's alcohol in the back. Please drink it, otherwise we have to bring it home, and that's so terrible.
Yeah.
So we really have a great panel, and so I'm going to give a brief intro on the powerful, executive, senior, wonderful speakers that we have tonight. So
we're done.
Okay. So we're going to start with Mary Hand, who is right here at Drinker Biddle and Reath, and she's the National Records Manager. Drinker Biddle has 650 attorneys. It's a multi-practice law firm in 11 states around the country. Have more than a decade of experience. Mary has more than a decade of experience in the field. She's responsible for firm-wide records management, including office relocations, lateral practice group integrations, and offsite storage transitions. She does a lot of amazing things internally, and she is a wonderful volunteer in our chapter. And this is her home base. We also have Robin Grant from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and she is a manager in the retail and consumer advisory practice. She's based in New York. She has several years of experience designing and executing processes and people changes across the retail value chain. She blends her expertise in technology transformations with an understanding of what is really required to transform people and organizations. She's done amazing past projects, including management strategy, development of a workforce management function, a large-scale project management for an automotive retailer, labor strategy, change management for a multi-billion-dollar department store. That's awesome.
I had no idea this was going to be read out loud. So you were doing that.
Well,
I was wondering what it would sound like.
Well, you have to get this one though. And program governance for a luxury jewelry designer. You can't do that. Great stuff. I think it's important to know how diverse our experts are. It really is, because that gives a lot of credibility to the presentation. So we have B.J. Johnson, the expert from Archive Systems, also a valued volunteer on our board. He's worked in the information management industry for over 15 years. He's managed record center operations, document conversion centers, and account management teams. He is VP on Archive Systems Solutions team, where he works with clients to implement technologies that improve business processes and their information governance program. I think he also does stand-up comedy in the few moments that I'm quiet. We are also lucky to have BJ working with us, and he does this in other organizations, helping in trade show planning, social media strategies, blogging, and webinar presentations. We have Ryan Seward from Knowledge Strategy Solutions, who is a managing director and consultant, and he's been a practicing attorney in Washington and New York for 20 years. That's a long time.
He's not an old man.
He spent the last 10 years specializing in information governance, and before coming to Knowledge Strategy Solutions, he led the regulatory retention and supervision product management team at Bank of America. I've heard of them. They're a pretty good-sized organization. Yeah. So he supported banks' legal and their compliance supervision functions, and he has a deep understanding of complex and constantly changing regulatory obligations facing today's companies. He is a guest facilitator at Columbia and a regular lecturer, although a little more than 10 minutes, around our industry. He has a BA in Public Policy Studies from Duke University and many other important, wonderful credentials. And I also present Steve Barrett, who is currently serving as the CEO of EMAG Solutions, a wonderful company that is willing to have me there, working in legacy media, e-discovery, and helping solve data problems for clients. The history is really amazing, I have to tell you. Do you have 10 minutes? Steve Barrett was the managing director of WilmerHale's e-discovery department, and he built it from the ground up, and we were lucky to have him come over to EMAG Solutions after that. Prior to that, he was Director of Litigation Services at Davis Polk, where he managed scores of paralegals, technologists, case managers, and worked with a huge staff of attorneys. He's had the benefit of not only working inside, but also advising clients during those roles. I think he's more famous for his jokes, but he is well known for having worked on Al Gore's IT committee as the CIO. And for
Did he help develop the internet?
I named him. It was me and him late at night on a Saturday. He invented it. I named it.
True story. It's an A originally.
You know, once you invent the internet, isn't it then all about the delivery, not just the data? So he is also pretty well known for volunteering in the Bill Clinton Foundation, and he's worked with Bill Clinton on some amazing initiatives like Dress for Success, but in Harlem. And I think it's really important that we have such a wonderful group of presenters tonight, people that are giving back to us, people that are making a difference during the day and helping others when they can. So we are going to have one person come up at a time, and there's a little electric shock here at 8 minutes, but
Jackie will administer.
Jackie will administer the shock as needed. So I'm going to call up Mary first.
We need to introduce the polling before you call Mary. You want to do that?
Sure.
We were going to poll for someone to introduce polling.
So tonight we'll be will a live polling feature, and this is the first time we're using it, so we're hoping that everything will go smoothly, but it's really easy to use. On some of the screens, we'll have a question that's asked, and we'll ask you to use your phones to respond, and there's two ways you can do it. You can either text the code to the number that's shown, and the instructions will be on the screen, or you can log on to a website, and the website will be shown as well, and you'll have the ability to respond there as well. And as you respond, you will see all the responses tallying up on the screen. So in real time, we'll be able to see each response. So let's hope it all goes well. This is the first time we're using it, and here's the first one. How would you describe your level of knowledge about going digital?
What's the number we're talking?
This is it. Yep. So all you have to do is go to pollev.com/402, or you text these codes. You have one for each option. All you have to do is text this number to this number. Either way, it works the same way, and it'll hopefully start tallying up.
You text the number 3.
You text the number, and then you text your number to that number. Oh.
Yep, there it goes.
It works. All right.
Yeah, all right. Total results 1. There we go.
And we'll try to do these very quickly between each presenter, so there'll just be a couple more.
I can't see the numbers.
All right, somebody in here wrote the book and they're shy. You pro level or no?
Go ahead, Michael. Text me.
Why should you? Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Nobody wrote the book.
Well, only 13
No,
of you
that's
voted.
just only 13 of you have successfully done it, so.
If you haven't voted, you can't have more wine.
I voted.
really, Hannah?
Did
you vote twice?
You're not voting.
Yeah, I don't even know what the first one means.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
Something hectic.
The hash value? Okay, so the topic we're going to cover right now is going digital, improving efficiencies, and removing paper from systems. You're pretty light speaking.
Speakers all around the room, too, so we don't have to holler.
One of the first things that I found was really helpful was to identify the electronic repository and structure to your file plan. For us, what it turned out to be primarily is our DMS, and we went through a few iterations of making sure that it matched our file plan. Initially, we had a file plan that really didn't match how we filed physical records, and it wasn't working, and people weren't, jumping in and taking advantage of it. We did an upgrade, and we revamped the folder structure to really represent how we file paper, and it's working much more smoothly. The other issue that we had, too, is there's certain material that because of the application it's in or the volume of the structure, you can't put it into your DMS. So what we're starting to do now is to take our shared drives and put controls on them. We have a matter-centric system. We're starting to apply matter centricity to our shared drives. We can put security controls on it, and we'll be able to apply retention controls. So we're working that through with our IS department. Another thing which we found is very helpful is to interject RIM into the operational workflow, to take a look at how the records flow through the operations of your organization. For us as a law firm, lawyers receive a great deal of information initially electronically, but a lot of it goes into their email, and there it stays. And in some situations, you have lawyers who are very careful about organizing things and putting them in folders, but they never quite make it to the DMS. So what we started to do as a value-added service is say to them, listen, if you've got it in a folder, we'll get IS to give us access to that client matter folder, and we'll assign someone to put it away for you. And then we designed a process whereby we could check off the email. If it was, when we put it into the DMS, just an email, it's marked as having been saved in the DMS. If the attachments had to be categorized separately, we would use the follow-up flag in Outlook to mark it as having been completed, so that at the end of the matter, being concluded, we could be sure that these were duplicate copies in the email. We could eliminate those because we knew they were safely in worksite or in our DMS. Another thing which we found was helpful, few of our offices had gone through a physical reconstruction. We went to a smaller footprint, etc. And as people were relocated, our record staff, instead of having them in a record center environment, isolated and apart from the rest of the world, I had them placed within the practice groups they supported. And that gave us a real advantage in that as a secretary would reach to print paper, we'd go, why don't you give that to us? We'll put it away for you. You don't have to print. We'll take care of that for you. So we would seize opportunities to interject and grab those records and get them put away before they wound up as a pile of paper that nobody knew what it was. Another thing which we have found is helpful is to try to integrate our scanners to the primary repository, in this case our DMS. And we had an interesting experience in that it's important to go back to your IS department and say, do we have any applications that we really haven't used that didn't take off? In our case, we had an application that we tried to implement a few years ago, and nobody was buying. But the good thing was the IS department continued to pay the maintenance on it, and there have been new features added to it. And for a nominal amount of money, we can do the upgrades that are necessary to take advantage of those features, and they have things like quality control and a whole workflow product so that you can actually track what's being scanned, how it's being scanned, who's doing the quality control on it. So, for a little budgetary cost, we're able to be in a position where we can say to the attorneys, have confidence that this is good because somebody's quality controlled it. Another thing that we found is really important is to try to integrate your electronic and physical record repositories, your records management system with your electronic repository. Because if you don't get to do that, you're doing double work all over the place, trying to get those two to talk to each other. And this, too, is a situation, too, where you've got to work with your IS department, see what applications you have, see if maybe, your DMS or your primary repository has a records management element that you can add as an additional feature to what you already own. And that makes the whole process a bit easier. So these were just a few things that, we have come across that have been very helpful to us to try to speed the process along make things work a little smoother and put us in a position where we can start to move forward on electronic records management. Any questions?
Your firm was featured today, Mary, on Worksite and how they rejiggered their, so it was Dan O'Loughlin and Rajiv Mukherjee from Essentio spoke today about some of the things that you, it was online, I managed. So they were talking about some of the things that you did today, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, that's nice to know, because I was heavily involved in that as we were doing through the whole redesign process, and we upgraded, Worksite and whatever, and we developed from that filing guides and all of that, so we could really tell people what to go. Goodbye. Oh, no, I got 5 minutes, man, I'm good.
Brian had his hand up.
Yes,
Brian,
From start to end, how long did it take, and what were your biggest challenges?
it's still ongoing, I gotta tell you. The biggest challenges, I think it got easier for us as we did the office reconfigurations, and I got my people embedded in the practice groups, because they could hear things and see things that isolated in a record center, they would not be privy to. And, we did a lot of rejiggering with staff, so, secretaries have a little bit heavier workloads, so now they're a little more willing to let go of it. And I think the fact that it was initially difficult, and it still has some challenges because we're not fully integrated between our RMS and our DMS yet. That will get better as we do that. I think the biggest challenge is getting the lawyers to let go of it and building their confidence and letting them know that, don't worry, if we make it electronic, we can print if you want paper, but we're going to give you a shred bin when you're done because it's not really necessary to keep 3 copies of the same thing. So the real challenge is the change management issue. Getting people to accept that life is changing a bit. There's a better and a newer way of doing things. So. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Do you have executive sponsorship helping you to push this, or?
I'm starting to. Initially, it was me crying in the woods and sneaking in and getting it done, But the firm is now much more aware of the fact that this is important. Not only for us, but for our clients, because we need to represent that we're on top of our game for this. So, yeah, the ball is starting to roll in that direction.
Great.
I got 2 minutes?
You have 2 minutes. We actually have to advance through some of these slides because you talked to a lot of them.
Yeah, well, they weren't
I think
slides.
that is a legal key one.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on those slides. That was more my outline.
Just sharing information.
Go back one. Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that was more my talking points.
All right, the next live polling question. What department has the most paper-based processes? And same way to respond, you can use the website or you can use text to respond.
BJ must be getting enough HRs there.
225-248.
Thank you.
Talk about voter confidentiality. Oh, that's great. That was wrong.
Hello, everyone. Interesting results on the screen. So before I exit the screen and start the presentation, studies have been done to determine which departments generate the most paper. It's human resources. So their organizations are sort of in tune with the rest of the world. So going paperless is a broad topic, and it means different things to different people. So what I thought I'd do during the time that I have is sort of focus on documents and processes that we all have in common. So human resource document management is one of my areas of expertise, so I'm going to use that as my example throughout the presentation. I'm also going to use invoices because, again, it's something that we can all sort of relate to as documents in our organization. I personally feel that the stars have kind of aligned right now, and we're in a better position than ever to really start to drive paper out of our organizations and implement digital solutions. So why do I say that? Why is now the perfect time to get rid of paper? Technology has to be at the top of your list. technology's become more affordable. It's because of competition. It is because of the cloud, but it's also because the cost of digital storage is also decreasing. Equally important, the feature set and technologies are becoming better. You don't have to purchase so many different solutions to get to your desired end goal. You can get things like legal hold, retention management, electronic forms, e-signature, classification, workflow. All of these features are now available in really intuitive solutions where training is not such a big issue. They're really easy to learn, easy to use, easy to implement. Digital-born documents. More and more digital-born documents are created every day. That's because of the increase in technology. If we think about invoices, for most of the companies that we work in, probably 50% of the invoices that come in are born digital. If you think about documents that might be in an employee file, same thing. Onboarding applications, applicant tracking, the list sort of goes on with HR technology. It's creating more digitally born documents. Unfortunately, all too often, these digitally born documents are printed and turned to paper for business reasons. But to me, that's usually because you might have the wrong technology in place, or you have poorly designed processes. And Mary talked about some things which really talked about aligning your processes to not have that problem. Integration, another thing that Mary had covered in her presentation. Let systems talk to each other. Particularly, so invoices is a perfect example. A lot of large organizations are implementing AP automation solutions. So they're integrating that with their financial system. So the AP solution is capturing the invoice, extracting the required information, passing it to the financial system to pay the invoices. Through that same integration, a lot of companies are now looking at the digital image of an invoice in their financial system, and that's through the integration with that document management system designed to manage invoices. Last one on the list is more of a driver. It's work, and we've heard this before. Work is not where we go, it's what we do. Remote workforces, I'm sure everybody in the room probably teleworks at some point. I know I love doing it. You know, working in my bunny slippers is one of my favorite things. Yes, I do have bunny slippers. And so, you know, teleworking, remote work teams, globalization of workforces. What that means is that we don't spend as many hours inside the four walls of an office anymore when we do our work. If you think about it, you need to access documents and information no matter where or you are, and you need to access it quickly and immediately. Paper just does not fit with the way that we work today, so it's got to go. I grabbed some information from a white paper that they released for Paper Free Day at the beginning of the month. I thought that first quote kind of summed up why a lot of organizations really are focused on going paperless. The organizations that move to the digital future and establish digital processes, they gain a competitive advantage over those that choose to stick with paper. You simply cannot do things as quickly if you work with paper. Paper creates friction in an organization. It doesn't allow you to be more efficient. I also thought the survey results in terms of why people go digital were spot on. Certainly the two at the top align with what I hear from all the clients that I'm working with, I should say. They want to be able to find the information quickly, and then they need to be able to share it. Thank you. And there's also the need to improve your processes. So another thing that Mary talked about, paper and digital have to coexist. You know, we all too often design a process and we like, oh, we got this cool digital process and the paper's over here. What you end up with is a broken process if you don't incorporate in any digital solution, blend paper together and make sure that you're managing them together. Think about all the ways that documents come into our organization. They come in email, multifunctional devices. Some of us are doing production scanning. No matter where or how that document originated, set up the same mechanisms to bring it into your organizations or your technology. Capture, classify, extract any information you need to, pass it to another system that you may be integrated with if you need to, route it to the proper people who need to work with those documents. And certainly you have to govern it, so make sure you know, with your technology that you're able to apply retention, legal hold, all those things that are important. So I'm going to wrap it up with sort of my wish list and things that I think that you really need as tools or features if you're going to be successful being paperless. Search is, of course, important. You know, if you can't if people can't quickly find documents, they're not going to want to use the technology. So I said doc and folder because I think a lot of times it's important to have different views, and that's particularly important in HR. Human resource professionals want to have that sort of 360 view of an employee, so they need to see all the documents. However, if they're dealing with an audit, they need to work in a document view, so it's a little bit different. You need to be able to have the two views. Secure sharing, we talked about that. Sharing documents is often the way that digital turns back to paper. Somebody needs something, so we print it. So make sure that you got technology where you can securely share information, and I don't mean emailing an attachment. I mean a link, preferably with two-factor authentication, that lets the user come back into the application to look at a document. I would also recommend that you get secure data rooms for audits where you can place documents so that people can work with them. Workflow, you got to have process automation, right? Route the documents to who they need to the people who need to act on those documents. Monitoring, now this is my lazy feature. It's important to know what documents you have, but it's probably more important to know the documents that you don't have. Nobody likes to get to an audit and realize that they're missing a piece of information, they're missing a document. So I want the system to keep an eye out for documents that are important to me that may not exist in the system, and I want notifications, when those documents are missing. E-forms and e-signatures, so electronic signing is becoming more popular, as well as electronic forms, but they got to work hand in hand. If you got an electronic form and you got to print it out to sign it, what did you accomplish? Classification, auto-classification. Again, if people have to print a piece of paper to place it on a document to get it into something, so you added a piece of paper to get the piece of paper into a solution, it doesn't quite feel right to me. So you should be able to introduce documents into your technology and let the technology recognize those information and classify them and properly route them. Last on the list is control, the records manager, so we got to be a little bit controlling. You got to control who has access to documents that might be in a collection, but just as important, what they can do with those documents. If you want to go paperless and you have a technology where people can access specific documents, do you really want to give them the ability to print those documents? If you're going paperless, I say no. You really want to give them the ability to download those documents? Again, I say no. That's it for me. Thank you. Questions?
So auto classification, are you considering that in terms of data security and protection? Because, your expertise is in HR, and with the invalidation of Safe Harbor Act for U.S. companies, it's one of the things we have to look at.
Yeah, so I'm looking at classification from the standpoint of bringing documents in the system and just properly classifying them according to whatever the client's existing structure is. Yeah, the EU data security was causing fits for us. We've gotten through it, but it was a challenge.
Yeah, because one of the things that's missing from a lot of the HR systems that are available now for electronic document management is that security classification. And then you talk about the control, and not a lot of systems have it as yet, but there is that self-destruct mechanism.
Yes.
Yes, you can download this file, but in 30 days, try accessing it again. It's gone.
Right.
In HR files, it's going to become more and more important.
Yeah, and so that's one of the #1 features that, Jackie makes a great point. When I talked about the secure sharing, again, we're talking about a link back to the application, there should always be an expiration on it that you're able to control. The link shouldn't just hang out there forever. Same thing with your secure data rooms. They can't just be open forever. Any more questions? My time is up, so the answer is no.
Our next live polling question. Same.
Oh, look, much bigger.
Yeah.
Bigger font.
Binary question, as easy as they come. So good evening, everybody. Brian Seward, now Strategy Solutions. So yes, if we had a reliable way to know what data paper electronic must legally keep and what data legally add, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, look at that. Whoa. We don't want to short answers. That's okay.
You guys don't want to control your data?
It seems like a bit of a loaded question, but so Knowledge Strategy Solutions, we are a consultancy made out of lawyers, but again, we operate primarily as a consultancy doing legal services consulting with a kind of specialty on legal data management. So that could be data preservation issues from the litigation and going through the records retention spectrum. And then we do also a lot of work on this last category, which has to do with enabling defensible disposition. And so I and Steve are going to double tag team this. I'm going to cover kind of where we come at this from as a consulting entity is around culture, right? Trying to help organizations cross the cultural hurdle to embrace disposition as part of their record retention regime. Steve will cover some of the challenges that come up with defensible disposition initiatives. And obviously, if you're going paperless and digital, that's a great moment as you're revamping or looking at your processes and procedures and trying to improve those. It's a great opportunity to not replicate everything because there's a lot of data, probably paper that you don't need to carry over into a digital format. And I would say that same sort of mindset can be carried over to all your different kind of data types. So understand in terms of enabling defensible disposition culture, obviously it's key to understand the value of a well-pruned data environment. So all of our, I'm hazard to guess that all of our firms and CEO mission statements tag information as a top asset in this 21st century economy. That's why we have all these data loss prevention initiatives, these cybersecurity initiatives. It's why we are spending lots of money on big data initiatives, initiatives to protect IP, protect patents, etc. So in that kind of an environment, maximizing the information assets is really about timely and efficient access and sharing of information, as some folks have already mentioned. And timely access to information has to do with knowing where the information resides, and efficient access to it has to do with having it be accessible in repositories that are clean, as clean as they can be, and devoid of non-useful information, so that people, when they go there and access them, they can actually be efficiently searching through it and getting to stuff quickly and sharing it quickly. Step 2, obviously, go to where the worst offenders of legacy data are. So we've heard obviously about legacy paper stores. Obviously, that's a great one. There's all these items I'm about to show you have a couple of things in common. First, they tend to be operating currently on autopilot. So at some point in time, there were well-meaning motivations for obviously storing records in a long-term capacity. Same would go for legacy backup tapes. Backup tapes were originally created, obviously, to be a disaster recovery mechanism for your technology systems. And then at some point in time, litigation creeped in, and there was a span of where part of the litigation e-discovery process was you had to preserve the backup tapes. And then that kind of spawned this culture where backup tapes got away from being for disaster recovery and became more about people just kept maintaining them out of fear of some potential litigation or some misunderstanding that they were obliged to continue keeping them for legal hold purposes. Email archives, they were spawned by, I come out of the financial services arena, so obviously there was regulations with regard to electronic communications and being able to have those retained for anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Same across other industries, healthcare, pharmaceuticals. And archives are created, and archives are really good at storing stuff, but they weren't really, at that time, they were brought to market focused on efficient extraction of data or deletion of data. And then file shares came into being as a way to, an early way of trying to be collaborative in our data and information sharing. Problem with file shares, again, is that there really is tends to be no attention paid to controls. People create a file share, they leave an organization, nobody really knows, why the file share was created in the first place or the use for it. So these are all opportunities to kind of prune and rid the organization of information. Step 3, understand what you're obliged to keep. So again, we often go into the clients and help them understand that, yes, regulatory data has a retention, but it's not, the retention isn't forever. There's things, they all have some sort of max period, and we try and help them reorient themselves to just focusing in on actually what they need to keep from a regulatory standpoint and making that the maximum. Similarly, legal hold data that's potentially involved in a regulatory investigation or litigation must be preserved, but again, not forever. So this goes back to kind of your backup tape scenario, but it extends beyond that. And then thirdly, obviously you want to maintain and continue to leverage and exploit data that's useful to the business that gives you a competitive advantage in the market, but only while it's doing that. You don't want to be keeping information within the organization that doesn't serve that purpose. So step 4 here in the process, obviously the challenge is how do you discern, right, what fits into those 3 categories. So the heavy lift is doing the analysis. That's where a lot of our work is in doing that, analyzing where the legal hold obligations are, where the regulatory retention obligations are, and then what's eligible for disposition. But there are times, again, where you're going to run into murky areas. So people aren't necessarily comfortable with the level of information and insight they have into the data that's potentially going to be disposed of. So how do you bridge those gaps? And so there's some interesting technological ways to do that. In the paper world, we've worked with partners and vendors who are able to take metadata from existing box coding, et cetera, extrapolate out from that, and be able to tell you what these other items that aren't as well coded are likely to be. And again, we could come in and do analyses to kind of assess the reasonableness of that. Tape restoration partners who, again, do the same sort of thing by grabbing key date and content metadata and able to, again, to extrapolate out to the less well-coded data and make intelligent decisions about how they should be coded. And then a lot of times we'll use early case assessment or collection tools, technology-assisted review tools in the e-discovery realm to go and do early collections of data. And once we have the data we know that's needed for litigation, that kind of frees the organization up to then dispose of the stuff that is outside of that. And then lastly is the taking action. So we often come into engagements where folks, again, have actually done analysis and know kind of where the bad data is, or the legacy data they can get rid of, but no action is taken because they can't find the impetus or the wherewithal or the person within the organization to sign off on that. So we try to help with that, but that's the inaction is an accident. It's not a particularly good one. You're creating ongoing legal risk. I don't know, probably show of hands here. We went through the poll survey, but if you have an e-discovery matter and you're supposed to be preserving data, depending on the scope, I don't know how many of you are actually including box stores in that preservation effort. Maybe you are, but even if you are, you probably aren't actually going and searching those boxes. Production is usually coming from the digital sources, and you're hoping that will get you where you need to be from the other side's perspective, and you won't be requested to perhaps try and produce or look in other arenas. So that's the kind of risk you create by keeping stuff that could have been disposed of earlier and may come back to bite you. Obviously, there's a cost, but then the biggest thing I think is the ability to leverage, missing the ability to leverage the information assets you have better and gain those competitive advantages. So by cleaning out these legacy stores and figuring out where your data is and figuring out what's valuable and what's not, you're able to share that across your organization and make yourself a better, more efficient organization and be more competitive going to market. So that's my part. So I'll ask any questions.
So from a very practical perspective, how do you overcome the defense attorneys just in case? Because that's why we keep everything. The defense attorneys just want to keep it just in case.
Well, you have to challenge them, right? So a lot of the over retention from a legal hold standpoint comes from defense attorneys or others citing headline grabbing cases that get through sanctions, but they fail to tell you the kind of very unique and specific fact patterns that tend to be very egregious. Like the person not only disposed of data, but they didn't even make an attempt for like 2 years to try and preserve the data. They never had any kind of retention policy of any serious import to begin with. So there's all sorts of distinguishing extreme kind of fact patterns that generally precede those sanctions. So you have to do the analysis. And once you do the analysis and you get in there, you actually find like there's a finite set of litigations you're dealing with. You know what the scope in terms of time period is. You figure out what your regulatory retention obligations are from, for day-to-day operations. And then you can do that and without even really getting close to being along any kind of dangerous line. There's archives and electronic data has been around for at least 10, 15 years now. So there's data that hasn't been touched for that long that can easily go. It just needs somebody to say, yeah, we're not using this. It's got no value. Let's get it out of here. And there's money behind it. And again, aside from the money, again, it's a better way to give yourself a competitive advantage as a business to understand where your information is and where the value is in it and leveraging that. Anyone else? Thank you much.
Just for the audience, because I control the clock, I shouldn't control the floor. Speak up, guys.
Otherwise, have more wine.
And our next question. Same instructions.
Wait, let me try to vote on this one. The cooperation proclamation is going to be all set.
So it's interesting because this survey question was taken by a judge, the question was taken from a judge's survey. And the judges cited lack of cooperation most, but that's their perspective. That's their perspective. Judge Waxy from Kansas had a little anecdote where two litigants came into his courtroom or his chambers and said that they just couldn't come to a resolution of the discovery dispute. He would say, okay, that's fine. I want you to have one more meeting, but I want you to videotape it. And if you can't come to a resolution, show me the videotape and then I'll decide. And he said not once had he ever watched a video because with that type of pressure, people were more inclined to cooperate. But I think for not in the litigation context, I think the last one I agree with that. Interesting. All right. So more on defensible disposition, and I think that this is a nice segue building upon what Brian was talking about in terms of how to approach these projects. And I think one of the biggest challenges, we all know that there is a measurable ROI. We all know that it can make a difference, but you have to sell that up the chain in order to get the money to do it. Backup tapes, which I'll talk about with a little greater specificity, is one of those opportunities because it's segregated, it's specific, it's quantifiable, and then the savings is quantifiable. Paper is much more challenging because you have to collect it all, you have to find it all, and then you have to touch the paper. And live data is also challenging because we use it, and how do you quantify that? Tapes, you know how much you're spending to store your tapes, you know how many tapes you have, and you know how to deal with that. So for starters, there's a difference between restoration and recovery when we're talking about data, and this is just some basic introductory terms of art. So restoration is getting the data, recovery is getting data that you can't get. So restoring a backup gives you that data, recovering something happened, something broke. Similarly, disaster recovery and archives are two different things. Disaster recovery is really a calamity. So all of these disaster recovery backup systems, if something really, really bad happens, we need to put our systems back online. If the office burns down, if something like that happens, we still need to keep on going, and that's what disaster recovery is. Archiving, again, is we might need this for the future. It's not because of a calamity, it's because just the normal course of business. With backup tapes, regardless of whether it's archive or disaster recovery, there are a number of challenges because of the way in which tapes work, which is different than other digital media. It can be encrypted. They can put other layers of things on it. One backup session can span multiple tapes. One tape could have multiple sessions. How do you unscramble that egg? Also, it's the interesting thing about tapes as compared to other data. So when you write something on a hard drive, the computer tells it where on the hard drive to store things somewhat arbitrarily. So if you think about where some could be over here, some could be over there, some can be over there. Backup tapes are really quite similar to, I think you guys were talking about millennials earlier, but similar to audio tapes, right? So I used to make mixtapes and this and that, and backup tapes write sequentially. So if you delete a single file off of a tape, just like it'll mess up your mix, it stops reading. There's that gap will stop the backup system from reading it. So you can't just go in and delete a file and put something else in the place. Also, what happens if the file's a little bigger or a little smaller? You can't do that with tapes. So that's one of the challenges for tapes. But all of these challenges are you're able to overcome them. None of them are so hard. With everything we do, there is a balance, right? So you want to have your corporate knowledge. You want to have the information that you need, but you're balancing it against risk and cost. The cost of storing it and the risk of keeping something that you might not need to keep or want to keep. So throughout all of these projects, you really want to find that right balance. And again, I think that backup tapes are a good opportunity for us as records professionals to come in and say, listen, I can do something. I can save us money. I can increase our efficiency. I can reduce our risk. This is a small pilot project. And once you get this savings, then you can use it as a jumping off point to do that much more. So if you're spending a couple scores of thousands of dollars a month on storage, if you're able to get cost savings for that, then ask for that money back so you can reinvest it in other things. So there is this ongoing balance. And again, what we're trying to do is reduce our count of whether it be tapes or data or paper. I didn't animate that, so I apologize for leaving paper out. And that's what we're essentially doing. How can we keep less? How can we store less? So then, what do we need? We need to make decisions similar to what Brian said. You want to keep the stuff you need to keep, but at the same time, you want to be able to make decisions as to what you can get rid of. And again, weighing your obligations versus costs and risk. So in terms of the need, your systems are vast and diverse, and there are all sorts of different softwares and formats. How do you read data that is contained in email? How do you read data that's contained in a document management system? How do you understand all of these things? You need to read multiple formats. You need to read multiple drives. For backup tapes, you need to know what's on the tapes. You need to understand if the tapes are out of order. How can we understand those things? So all of these different factors can complicate the approach to a good cost-saving project. But again, all of these you can overcome them. So don't let a little bit of challenge in terms of the tactics sort of dissuade you from buying into that overall strategy of more efficient records management and information governance. So for backup tapes in particular, there are a number of challenges. First, in order to restore data off of backup tapes with great frequency, you need to duplicate your native environment. you guys don't have enough resources. Most folks don't have dual environments just sitting around waiting for a restoration challenge or, you know, a defensible disposition project. It can really stop you from being able to do something. Similarly, if you don't have a catalog. So again, as you back up files, the system should remember each file that's backed up, where it is, when it was from, and what you want with it. But just as how your documents have a life cycle, so do the catalogs. So if you have 10 years worth of backup tapes, but 5 years worth of catalogs, well, what the heck's on those 5 years from when you don't have the catalogs? The random box of stuff, right? So, you know, Jim just left, you retired after however many years, and you open up the closet or you open up the drawer. What is all this stuff? And again, if all you see is this physical object, you need to be able to read it and understand it, and have partners, you know, who will work with you. Again, you guys have day jobs. This isn't, you don't have the time to be doing this throughout the course of the day. So being able to identify what you don't know. And then again, in backups, there's a tremendous amount of duplication. So if you think about email over the course of a week, and if you do a backup every night, on Monday you back up Monday's email. On Tuesday, you back up Tuesday's, but you also have everything from Monday, and then on Wednesday, and it grows exponentially. So your backup on January 1st, as compared to your backup on July 1st, your backup on July 1st is going to have a heck of a lot of information from the January 1st backup. I have, you know, 30,000 emails in my inbox. I'm like a records person's nightmare. I have one folder, it's called inbox, but I can find everything. I don't delete anything. I can find everything.
I've heard that story.
And so I'm in the wrong crowd for that. But again, how do you handle all of this duplicative data, and how do you understand and make these decisions? In the e-discovery world, we talk about deduplication all the time. They're exact duplicates. This is different, right? They're sort of duplicates, but they're sort of not. So how do you handle all of these things? And then each of the catalogs, if you think about the tape, so there's one catalog line per file, right? So each file gets a line. There are around 8,000 files per gigabyte. Okay. There are around 4,000 gigabytes per tape. Okay, now we're talking about bigger and bigger numbers. You have 32 million files per tape. Holy tamale, now we're talking about real data. And then if you have 32 million catalog files per tape, and then you have 100 tapes, how do you analyze this? How do you make decisions? You need to use technology. You need to use strategic thinking and planning and foresight and understanding of your business. And that's, again, all of these things, it's, you know, it's not, in New Jersey, there was a congressman who was a rocket scientist, and I think there used to be a bumper sticker like, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a congressman, but it sure does help, or something like that. For a rocket scientist, it's just rocket science. And for folks who do this on a daily basis, you know, 32 million lines times 100, you can do it, right? If you've done it before, if you've done it multiple times, you can do it again. This ties into misconceptions, right? So there are certain preconceived notions about defensible disposition projects that really scare people. But again, this is a great opportunity for folks in the records world to bring real value, cost savings, and then get the buy-in for other projects. So data can't be separated easily, it's like splitting an atom. You actually can. You can make those decisions. Second, you can only go back to go forward. There's this thing that if we're going to start this project, we have to start from the 0 point in time and then go forward. You don't. You can start today and then go forward. There's also the misconception that you can't go back to go forward, that you have to start from this point in time. Don't worry about what happened before. That's gone. What's done is done. Let's just start today and do better tomorrow. That's also a misconception. And the last thing, it's too hard. Right? It's too hard to to go back. We're not going to be able to understand this. We have all these tapes. How are we going to ever do it? It really is a manageable project. If we break it down, we're going to talk about change management and other things shortly. And I think that these types of projects are really good entrees, especially in the backup tapes, to enter into defensible disposition. So I know I'm over time, but any questions? No questions. All right, thank you. Rush Holt, that was the congressman.
Oh, there you go.
For Robin, we have the last question up. When I think about change in my workplace, I feel, and you can put in the response the same way, website or text.
I feel like I need to call Robin.
I don't change it like that.
Yeah, empowered, excited, anxious, resistant. This is the wine session, guys. It's the last one. It's warm and fuzzy, which is how I like to talk, but oh, that's good.
I think people misunderstood what excited me.
I don't see terrified
The wine.
Resistance.
That's change management.
So how many of you guys were like, well, it depends when I think about this, right? I could feel a number of these ways, but it really depends on how prepared I think we feel for a change. And that's what I'm going to talk about now in my 10 minutes. So this is, and Steve tipped me off pretty well, this is, in my opinion, the hard part. So yeah, you have a million bajillion records that you're like, what am I going to do about this? But when it comes to what's really difficult about big change for organizations, it's getting people to do it. And so, for example, 86% of CEOs think technology is the future. Like, that was the most brilliant thing a CEO could say, right? We all know that. 4 out of 10 think that it's IT's problem. And I think that, I'm going to get into that here, but, you know, we're sitting around this room and we're talking about digital records and the role of IT a little bit, and how it's all about technology, but it's really about you using technology and about us sort of creating organizations that think that that's everyone's job. How can we transform from paper to digital if it's IT's job? We've all sat on the phone with an offshore IT organization. That's not the answer. So I'm gonna present this through 4 different elements here. And so you guys have heard a number of things about change management, I'm sure. You've read business books. You've had someone, a consultant, probably come in, tag along to the project management team and say, I'm in charge of change management. And what I believe and what I think is really the future is that it's embedded in every project. If you're at a point where you're already sitting there with funding and you guys are saying we're ready to do this, and then you think about change management, it's already too late, honestly, because it deserves funding of its own, and it's tightly embedded with the project itself. And so there are 4 different things that I want you to walk away with today that are sort of elements to bring into the project when you get ready to do this. This is the rubber meets the road. Let's go digital. How are we going to get people on board? So the first thing that I want to mention is tell a story. How popular are TED Talks? People love stories. They hate PowerPoint presentations, so I apologize. There's a time and a place for a business case, but when you're doing transformational change, a story is really required here. It enables people to interpret the message in their own way. It brings emotion on the table. People think that that's a weakness, but it really enables people to connect with an idea and forms a habit. So when you've got something in it for you, you're more likely to not print that piece of paper. And it applies to projects across the board. But a story is really important. And someone asked about executive leadership around this before. A lot of the times, those are the people that have some of the best and the most inspiring stories, and that's another good reason to get them involved from the beginning. The second part is model support. So PwC recently went to Google, which is we left IBM Lotus Notes. Is anyone on Lotus Notes?
There's plenty of people on Lotus Notes.
Very secure, certainly, but the worst. So we have a bunch of partners that are used to using Lotus Notes, and we went Google. They are terrified. but we have sort of like a team of people who literally will sit in offices with them and make sure they get it. And I've been in organizations where it's the executive assistant's job to learn the new system, and then he or she kind of tells the partner, or they just end up managing it themselves. But it's critical that management does it themselves. They cannot delegate change. I loved the fact that, Mary, you guys had your team embedded in there, and then you want those sort of habits and characteristics to like live there so that you guys can pull out one day. You know what I mean? Which maybe is sooner than later. But it's so important that managers take that on. I think we're beginning in the corporate world to really embrace a culture of people management and what it really takes to be a good manager. And so hopefully some of these skills come along with that. But lack of executive support is a death sentence. It's just if it's people below management doing it, they're going to resent management for having to do it and then not learning it. So classic case of why examples are important. The third one is establish structure. So have a plan. I know that sounds silly, but when people see a structured project around something like going digital and it makes sense to them, they're much more likely to jump on board. The other part of this is creating reward mechanisms. And so I don't mean pay someone every time they like save a PDF. You know what I mean? Like it's not about like continuous compensation. It's more about being unexpected in the way that you reward people. So being creative and just showing that there's appreciation there. Really important.
You're not ruling out money.
I mean,
No, not ruling out. Always not.
For sure. The last S word here is skills. And so making people feel as though some elements of this project are a skill they can learn and take away, or it's another benefit to them, is also important. And it helps to sort of embed those activities and those habits in people for the long term. So not just sending a to-do a reference guide or whatever. I mean, those are easy. But really taking the time and the commitment and investment to train is very important. And like it says here, on-the-job training is just as great if you have the people who are dedicated to doing that on the day-to-day basis. So I'm closing with, it's about impact to people here. And it requires care and feeding. And by care and feeding, I mean collaboration, commitment, and funding. Change management is not free, and it's not free because it's not a bolt-on of an existing project. It's something that's part of your strategy moving forward. And so if you need me to come fight for change dollars, just give me a call. I got a lot of horror stories about when it doesn't work. So yeah, I got a business idea there. So that's all that I have, I think. Any questions?
Can you go back to established structure, Robin?
Yeah.
When you talk about the structure, you're not talking about the project plan and the governance structure for whatever the change is, right?
Well, I'm talking partly, but it's more about how that plan is communicated to people. And so there's probably a lot of back-end stuff going on that requires structure. It's how that's visible to the people that you're impacting. Does that make sense? So I think a lot of times projects, especially ones that people are semi-confident in, like stay in a black box. And they're like, we'll tell people when we need to tell them because we don't want them to, spread rumors or hear things too early. But when there's like transparency around the strategy, I think it builds trust instead of taking it away. Yeah.
We actually have one millennial question. So, do you notice any difference?
Then why
I love
are you
millennials.
Then why are you asking it?
What's that?
Then why are you asking?
No, I said we had I'm asking a question of her. So, when you're working on change management, do you see a difference between millennials and different age segments?
I think the root of the problem is that we are treating millennials as if they're
Old people like Gen X's?
Well, it's just there's always going to be a millennial group, and it's really about thinking about change as how this impacts you and your past experiences versus me and my past experiences. And it goes back to telling that story. What resonates with someone who's a Gen X or a Boomer or whatever, it's not going to be the same thing as with a millennial. I think companies are realizing that they need to be more agile, and so they're blaming millennials for making them change, when it's really about, you just need to be up with, like, the audience continuously.
Yeah.
We happen to be pushing you that way because it's just that time, you know?
I love that.
Robin, in your experience, can you craft a single message, or do you need to craft different messages for your different audiences?
Always different.
Because
Yeah.
in this room, you're looking at baby boomers, Gen X's, and millennials.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Millennial,
when you
single.
millennial, no, Nicole and Mike fall in this one too.
Couple next year.
Nicole and Mike fall in this one.
People,
The guy in the middle.
stuff, they love you.
The millennial meter
You're
went
the
off
only
5
one who
times at the
insulted
door.
the old folks today, so.
Yeah, you're on the carpet anyway, Dylan.
Dylan's not here right now.
You know, so, you know, I'm curious, how do you deliver a message about change to 3 different audiences in today's complex corporate structures?
Yeah. So well, first of all, it's like corporations aren't broken up that way, you know?
No.
So you'll have demographics that are sitting in different pockets everywhere, obviously.
But also by role,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
So like you would, so like if you take a law firm, for example, if you're doing a document management initiative, the conversation about why they ought to buy in is going to be different. But the conversation you have with the secretary is going to be different than the conversation with the partner is going to be different than the conversation with the associate, because they care about completely different things.
But don't you find it's important, I find it's important to bring everybody together for that kickoff, for everybody to understand what the pain point, that pain point is across the board, right? Because maybe you don't even know what is annoying me to death or why I need to be on board. I have a phrase I say, you really don't know what you really don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So, right? You really don't know. You can't possibly experience it. So it goes back to the 3 different messages, Jackie. You know, you have a different set of understanding and values and concepts than somebody else might. And maybe by understanding what your pain point is, they'll finally understand why Mary needs the records to go this way. Because what's the big deal? I can put everything in Dropbox, right? Right.
Yeah.
So everybody coming together is a you really don't know moment.
Yeah, and I mean, so if you have management on board, or you at least have them knowledgeable and working with their teams, they can help to filter up some of that information and then bring it back to the core team and say, this is the feedback we're getting. I also think that you can create one purpose for doing it overall that you put on the T-shirt, but you still need to be able to like manifest that in different ways. So, you know, hands-on training, emails to people like that. You know, like if you just provide sort of a suite of options, it's heavy on the front end, but the benefits are helpful for a number of different people. All right. Not change.
No, got change.
Yeah, I like
got
that.
milk, got change.
Yeah, and then my number on the back.
Nice.
Yeah, don't go there.
Far bad.
Yeah. The door was open. Don't go in.
Well, thank you everybody for a wonderful presentation and for a pretty good audience too. I think we had some good jokes over here in this side. We apologize, Dylan, but you know you're still a millennial.
Noted.
So again, thank you to Drinker Biddle. Thank you to all of our wonderful presenters this evening. Since you're here and you're a captive audience, on December 16th, we're going to have a webinar on LinkedIn. No, we did that
No, we
already.
did that
on
last
Twitter.
year. Thank you.
On Twitter. Thank
I'm
you.
done.
If it's more than 140 characters, I can't remember. So we'll be doing a nice webinar on Twitter for professionals, and we're going to all try and act like that. That's our event for December, January 20th.
January the 20th. Yeah.
So on the 20th of January, we are having an event in New Brunswick at Heartland Brewery. Harvest Moon Brewery, and it should be a really nice event. And if you happen to like beer, they have a lot of different kinds. And
the brewmaster will be giving us a demo and a tour. So.
And so we would love to see you again. And the first beer at least is free on us.
That's how we get you.
So thank you all, and you're required to stay for about 40 more minutes or as long as those 4 bottles of wine.
Well, that's okay, I can pack one of those up. Just to follow what Michael said, the Twitter event is free, and it's a 12 to 1 at lunchtime lunch and learn webinar. Send it out to everyone in your network, because the more people we get involved in these little free events, the more people we can bring into the organization, and the more expertise we have to pull from to give you good sessions. Some of the people you see in the room came to us that way. You never know who's going to get on one of the events and find out. In September, we ran a joint event with the IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. They came to us because they participated in our LinkedIn events. So you never know who you're going to get. It is free. As soon as you get the link, Session's going to be sending it out tomorrow, the next day.
Very soon.
Very
soon.
No pressure, Seth.
Send it to everybody you know.
Please retweet it.
Our January event is a social event. It's just come out, network, get to meet your peers, get to meet the vendors in our industry who are so helpful and so supportive. And those of you in the room, I have not hit up for a check yet. I'm coming to you, so just know I'll be there. But come out and get to meet the people who help us do our jobs on an everyday basis. On a separate note entirely, and a lot of the people in the room are already involved in this, we are embarking on identifying candidates for next year's board for the ARMA Northern New Jersey chapter. Now, don't panic. I'm not going to sign anybody up tonight to be on the board. But if you want to avoid being on the board, the trick is to sign up to be on the nominating committee, and I am looking for volunteers for that. The key to not getting nominated is to be on the nominating committee. So please see me if you're interested in helping. Your job is going to be to work the room, just like I do at all these events. Sidle up next to people who've had 2 or 3 glasses of wine and convince them that being a volunteer for ARMA is a great idea. Other than that, there's still food left outside. There's still drink there. We have the room till 8 o'clock.
And thank you.
Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your friends. A special thanks to Mary Jean for joining us from Dress for Success. There are a lot of professionals in this room, and before she leaves tonight, she better have at least the name of 2 people who are going to volunteer to help her with her organization. Because there are far too many people in here who have too much experience and can really help these women get jobs. So please think about it. As I said earlier, take it back to your companies, the match and donation program. Thank you to Michael and his committee for putting tonight together, Dylan for being the butt of our jokes all night long.
And Dylan for helping on the committee to make sure everything that you ate and drank.
Sean and his team for getting you all in the door, and to all of our speakers, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah. DJ, you gotta talk to Mary.
Down here with
It's very near.
I gotta head back that way.
Okay.
No problem. Just don't go away. You guys listening to very loud rap music, right?
These are rock fans. You guys will get along well.
Oh, I got plenty of good music.
He's rock.
Okay.
Plenty of good music.
He's rock.
I'm a little bit country. She's a little bit rock and roll. Yeah. I might have one more Coors Light.
All right.
Welcome. We have to get your stuff out. Does anybody want to help me get stuff to your car? Can we help Mary Jean get stuff to her car?
Yeah.
I'm
gonna enlist Michael.
Okay, Michael, you'll help get stuff to her car?
Sure.
You don't mind? That would be great. Thank you. Because I think Mary Jean and I would really, we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
Very new. Yeah. Like I was on a conference call for an hour today.
Yeah, we do. It's our pre-pub data.
When we're trying to sell them on.
I know, I live on that.
Documents, electronic records, so much legal stuff involved in
two bedrooms, some downsizing for people. Was not working out for us.
Thank God for the railroad.
Great job.
Yeah.
I enjoyed
Yeah.
And I have all, we have a lot of careers.
when, space out.
Right.
Thank you.
Hey, good luck. Get it done. Quick, so that you can, get the customer.
Right, it's a slippery slope to help. I feel like I've learned a lot of before I'm investing.
Oh, yeah.
Together for you. Because you might have.
You don't want to do that.
So, you're like balancing.
Right.
We're gonna move stuff downstairs, Mary Jean.
Some of the
So if anybody wants
questions
to take
that
it
we
back.
ask, it's like, we really don't, they're like, I don't know. It's like, we've never been through it. We really can't answer it.
Going down, they can take it back.
All right. So you kind of called it. What about this? What about that?
I'm working on it.
Like, when they have to,
my words.
gotta go down to the judge, tell them like how long it comes off the
You
vehicle.
can watch my words.
Yeah, watch your words.
That's safe, right?
I like to re-interview everybody because last time we talked and this is unfolding.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah.
it's the person then, so it's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then it goes nowhere because nobody cares.